Okay, record is on. All right, so the mic is on. Thanks to. May I have your name? Okay, so thanks to Asan, actually donating a charger and the batteries, we actually get the mic working again. So, but I'm not going to leave it in the classroom, so I will bring it back to the office, just in case, somebody, decides to take it away. Okay. Actually, there's a very easy way to prevent theft of this kind. You just use epoxy putty and glue it to one of the outlets. I mean, it's not unremovable. They just have to break the outlet itself to take the charger with them. But that's a lot of work. All right, so what we'll do today is we'll go over the homework assignment, and then we'll take a look at the spreadsheet that is supposed to generate examples for you guys to work on. So we'll take a look at both of those. The first one being the homework assignment. So we'll go take a look. Oh, this is kind of interesting too, in case anyone in this class is interested in doing something for the Diesel Ziller attack drone, thing. Just kind of contact the computer science student club, and they will probably fill it in. Is that right? Okay, so Kevin is the person here. He's the vice president.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so contact Kevin if you want to kind of participate in this project. I'm not going to spend too much time to talk about this today because we got some other stuff to talk about. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about the homework assignment. It was not supposed to be really difficult, but I think if somebody does not understand the concept correctly, that can be time consuming. But with the understanding of the concept, it really should not be very time consuming. So we'll start with the previous homework assignment because I lost the solution to the previous homework assignment. So I'm going to work on this from scratch again. That shouldn't take too long. All right, so we'll just work on this one. I'm going to work on it from scratch again, which is actually useful because in case you forget how to do this, we can now figure out how to do this. Okay, so I'm just doing the first clause here. So the first clause, by converting the implication into a negation and a disjunction, I got this part, and then from here I can apply the Morgan's law, where we have not P plus not Q. Because of the Morgan's law is distributing the negation into the individual item, but we have to change the conjunction into a disjunction. And then we can remove the parentheses because we only have disjunction left. So this is the first clause. And then the second clause is already a CNF. So we have Q or not R. It is by itself a CNF already. And then the last one, it's the most complicated one, and you can apply distribution first, or you can apply De Morgan's law first. Either way works. So I'm going to apply De Morgan's laws first. So we end up with a not R plus the negation of P or S, and that turns into a not R plus, and then we distribute the negation into the disjunction. So that would become not P, not S, because by distributing the negation into the inside of a disjunction, we also have to change the disjunction itself into a conjunction. And it is not quite a CNF yet. We have to distribute the not R. So now we have not R, let's see, not R, not P as one phrase, one clause, and then plus not R, not S as the other clause. And just keep the ordering right. There we go. Okay. Is that right? And that's the starting point of your homework assignment. So when you combine all of these, you have a CNF. But for this homework assignment, did I do it in the reverse way again? Okay, so it's R plus, oh, okay, I see. We are distributing, okay, I just have to kind of go through in my mind to figure out how to do it. A times B plus C. Okay, gotcha. Okay, there we go. That looks right. Yes? Okay. So at this point, we can now move on and talk about the current homework assignment, the one that's due like a few minutes ago. So that one is the actual resolution proof. And the theorem that you want to prove is very convenient because it is the negation of a conjunction. So when you want to prove by contradiction using resolution, the first thing you need to do is to negate the theorem itself. Okay? So when you negate this particular theorem, okay, so we have not P and R as the original theorem, but you have to negate the theorem first before you put it into the CNF. So now you have the negation of the negation, so that cancels out and then you just get PR left. And PR by itself is already a CNF because when you look at P, it is by itself a CNF, and when you look at R, it is by itself a CNF. So when you have a conjunction of two CNFs, it is also a CNF. But it doesn't hurt to look at it this way. In other words, you look at P as an independent clause and R as an independent clause instead of looking at PR as one single term. Okay, so now that we have all four of these components, we can now say, can we get to a contradiction? Okay, so this is the first clause. I'm going to copy over here. This is the second one. Because what we are doing right now is we're constructing a long CNF by combining all the CNFs that we already have derived. The first four, okay, these first four are representing facts that we know. These are these come from the well-formed formulae in iota. These are given to be true to begin with. We just have to do some massaging to turn those into CNFs. And then the last one is this one here. This is coming from the negation of the theorem that we are trying to prove. So you append these two to the end of the entire CNF. And now the question is, can we do any resolution here to get to a contradiction? And the quickest way to do it is only involves two steps. So the trick to do resolution is to make use of the single ones. Okay, to use those first. If they don't work, then you use the more complicated ones. So in this case, we do have two single variable clauses. P is one and R is the other one. So I would try to use those first. Okay. So you can either pick one of those, you can pick one of these, pick P, okay? So when you pick P, then you have to use another clause that has a not P. And in this case, we have this guy with a not P, we have this guy with a not P, but you want to pick one that has fewer terms because that will give you possibly another single term clause, which is really helpful. So let's just do something that is not as productive. So as I specified in the homework assignment, you need to tell me which variable is being used for resolution. So in this case, I'm using single underline to indicate the not P of the first clause is being used to resolve with this P of the second last clause. So as a single step of resolution, what you do is you just append the result of the resolution here. The result of the resolution is to copy everything from both clauses except for the variable and the negation of the variable involved in that resolution. So from the first clause, we can now copy this portion. So we just stick it over here. And then from the second one, once P is gone, there's nothing left. So that's the result here. Is that okay? Does everybody understand how I just applied one single step of resolution? So according to the homework assignment, you also need to specify or tell me what is new. So I'm going to use double underline here. to indicate this is the new clause. I mean, this is kind of obvious. So if you miss this part and do not indicate what is the new clause, as long as it is obvious, I'm not going to take points off. Okay, so looking at this, I go like, what can we do about this? What about R? Can we apply R and do some resolution with it? Or are there other things like we can do something with, with that single term P? Okay, we can do something with this P again because here's another one that has a not P, so we can do another resolution using this particular P, but this time we are going to merge it or resolve with this term here. Okay, so the result of that is going to be copying this whole thing, and then plus whatever is the result of resolving not P or not R with just P itself. And the result of that is just copying not R, because the not P we do not copy because this is one of the variables that we use for the variable that we use for the resolution. This P we do not copy either because that's also of the same variable used for this resolution. So the only thing left is the not R. Now, if you don't notice that you can actually come to a contradiction at this point, and you go a few more steps first before you get to a zero, that's okay. I'm not going to take any points off for taking the scenic route. As long as you end up at the same point, we get to the same destination, there's nothing wrong with taking the scenic route. But because we have limited class time, I'm going to get to the destination right now. So the next one I'm going to do is to look at, hey, we have an R here, and we have a not R here. They can resolve to nothing. Okay? No? Well, this middle step is extra just so that I can show you the general idea of resolution. So now we can now say, okay, let's go ahead and use this R and this not R as the two clauses for this last step of resolution. And the last step of the resolution would end up with a 0. And that's the end of it. This is the end of the proof almost, because the homework assignment also want you to tell me how to interpret this. Okay, so just getting to a 0 means nothing, right? So you have to say, because we can get to a result of false, it is a contradiction, and because the negation of the theorem leads to a contradiction, the theorem itself is true, because that is the whole essence of proof by contradiction. So if I follow my own instructions here, then I will say the CNF resolves to false. There is contradiction. This means the theorem is true. Okay, that's or something to the same effect. You can just say there's contradiction implies the theorem is true. Okay. Is that okay? Now, if I want to be more specific, I can also indicate what the theorem really is, because I can be sure that the theorem is the negation of P and R. That is the theorem. It is not PR. PR is the negation of the theorem that I'm trying to prove. The actual theorem that I have just proven to be true is the negation of P conjunction R. But that part is not needed, as long as you can explain to me that, okay, because the CNF resolves to false, there's contradiction. Or if you want to shorten it, you can say the CNF leads to contradiction, works just as well. And the conclusion is the theorem is true. Are we doing okay so far with this? So that picture, that I have used, multiple times, that really is that's important, because it shows you the differences between a direct proof and proof by contradiction. A direct proof, you start with everything in the iota. So the iota set is here, and then your destination, where you want to go, is the theorem itself, non-negated. And you have all of these routes, but they are all basically one long chain of implications. Because what you really want to do is to say, everything that we already know in iota implies psi is true. And that's what makes, this is what makes a theorem a theorem. When you say proof by contradiction, it is a little bit different. You basically start with I, which is a whole set of well-formed formulae, and then you put not psi, which is the negation of the theorem, into this whole mix. Okay, so now you have one bigger CNF to begin with, and then what you want to do is to say this whole thing through a long chain of implications will go to false. This is proof by contradiction. This is a direct proof. Is that okay? Now the reason why proof by contradiction is useful in this case is because in resolution, the terms get shorter and shorter. Because every time you do one resolution, you're taking one variable out of those two clauses. Whatever is resulting from the resolution has one fewer variable compared to the originals, right? So eventually, if contradiction is where you should end up with, it has to get there. Okay? Now, there's also another reason why resolution is useful, because at some point you will know that you are stuck. Because no matter which two clauses you choose to resolve, it always resolves to something that's either useless, like true itself is not useful, or it will resolve to something that is already in the CNF. So you know that you're running in circles. If you're running in circles in a resolution, you know that it's time to stop, which basically means the proposed theorem is not really a theorem in that case, but it will terminate. That whole process has to terminate. All right? So are there any other questions about the homework assignment? So this is kind of what I'm expecting. You can just copy the first part. You don't have to rederive everything from the previous homework assignment. So this part is optional. You don't have to do this part. This part is not optional. You do have to say that this is the negation of the theorem so that I know what it is.
Would it be okay to just leave it as PR?
Hmm? Well, but then you have to tell me what is PR, right?
Well, because you said that they gave the theorem as a CNF, that's why.
Right, right.
That you already know. So I started with PR. I did not start with negation of negation.
Okay. Well, I'll think about it because because part of it, the importance of this step is you have to make sure that you start with the negation of the theorem. So the step of negating the theorem itself is important. So whether you spell it out or not, that's a different thing. So I'll think about it. Okay. Are there any further questions about CNFs, resolution, and proof by contradiction? Because all of those concepts are combined in this particular homework assignment.
For the negation of PNR, if you were to have left that just as the conjunction of PNR and not split them off into their own two, is that just wrong from the get-go, or is that a special way?
Okay, so let's take a look at that. So you're basically saying, okay, we're not separating those into two, right?
Yeah.
So that means your resolution is going to be much harder because you cannot single out P without the R. And so even though yes, if you look at this whole thing, without the parentheses, it means exactly the same thing, but it becomes really hard to single out the P and indicate, oh, this is what I use for the resolution. But if you are clear about that, like this, I will still take it as a correct answer. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So obviously we used proof by contradiction to solve this. Is proof by contradiction the only way we can solve via proof by resolution, or can you solve by trying to find?
Oh yeah, you can anything that can be proven by resolution and proof and contradiction in this particular case can also be proven by a direct proof, can also be proven by a truth table. Okay, how do we prove this with a truth table? Okay, so the way you do it with a truth table is you basically use this entire CNF, right? So you spell out this entire CNF, and then because we have 4 variables in this case, so we will end up with 16 rows in the truth table. Is that okay? So with all 16 rows, you evaluate the actual result of the entire CNF. If every single row ends up with a 0, then you know there's no chance this CNF can ever be true because you have just exhausted all the possible values and all the combinations of all the possible values for the variables. So that's the other way you can also prove that there's a contradiction. Then you can reuse proof by contradiction and say that the negation of PR has to be a theorem. So you can use that approach too. But the homework assignment specifically asks for resolution and CNF, so you cannot deviate from what the homework assignment is asking for. But yes, there are alternatives to prove this particular theorem.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
You know your CNF generator? We were trying to do a truth table for that.
Yep.
And some of them that showed up to be resolution by contradiction never really came.
We will take a look at that. It is possible that I have a bug in the spreadsheet, but I thought I fixed that, so we'll take a look. And that's the other class. Okay, so we got 440 shared, and it's the CNF generator. Okay, so the problem with the CNF generator, so this one, it thinks it can resolve, this one cannot resolve the contradiction. So let's go ahead and pick one that can resolve to contradiction, or it thinks it can. Okay, so this one, it thinks it can resolve to contradiction. So what I need to do is to look at the raw part and see whether the bug is still there. So the bug is not there. Oh, it is still there. See this row here? It has none of the variables or the negation of those things. So the corresponding expression is it's going to be false for all the cases. So that's why it is taking this one as something that can resolve the contradiction. So I have a bug in the spreadsheet, so it's still there. I thought I fixed it. Sorry. I suppose I can fix this one by looking at the other three and then just use the other three to figure out. Yeah, I can do that. Yep, it still has that problem. The other thing we can do is for something like this, it can automatically just throw out the entire term. And to throw out the entire term means, if an entire column is false, which is not possible, it has to kind of ignore that entire thing. Okay, let me see if I can do that quickly here. It's a conjunction of all of these. There may not be any quick way to do it, unfortunately. And all of these are coming from here. So I'll have to think about how to fix this. You can turn this spreadsheet into something that can check whether something can resolve to contradiction. That you can do. You can basically give it, these. You can tailor columns G, H, I, and J so they're not randomized. So that way you can basically indicate your own your own CNF and check whether it is resolvable or not. So at this point, it is broken. I apologize for having this being broken at this time. I just have to figure out a way to make sure that this cannot happen. You cannot have a whole row of zeros. But I don't want it to be too programmatic either. Yep, go ahead.
Just to practice, I found that if I just kept looking and I looked in the row, it does generate ones that'll resolve that contradiction that don't have a row of zeros. So I mean, you can get examples. It just takes a while.
Yep. But I would much rather fix the
cool.
the spreadsheet so it doesn't give you something that.
But if you want to practice right now, you can check that. And
Yep.
It does make them without that row.
Yep.
of zeros.
Yep. And there are ways to make sure there's a no row of zeros. It's just that, but it does introduce artifacts, because you can look at the other three and say, if the other three are all zeros, I cannot be a zero. But then it introduces some artifacts into the whole thing. But for practice purposes, I don't think it's going to be a big deal. Okay, so let me fix this, sometime tonight, and then I'll send another note to say that, okay, I think it is fixed, so you guys can go ahead and practice again. All right. Any other questions about the spreadsheet? So the way it is right now does work, but you have to pay attention and make sure that we don't have a whole row of zeros. That's all. Okay. Any questions? Yep.
Can you use resolution at direct proof?
No. Because resolution, I suppose you can, but you have to. Yeah, you can use it in a direct proof because it is still an implication, because each step of resolution is still an implication, but you're not working toward the goal of a false. You're working to the goal of whatever theorem that you want to prove. Okay. So you can do it that way. It's just that the program now looks for a different end state as opposed to the other one, which is always ending with a contradiction. So the answer is yes. Yep.
Wait, if you do that, then how the answer is going to look like? Will that be the theorem that you prove, or just be one?
Say that one more time.
If you use resolution for direct proof, then how would the answer look like?
Then the answer will have your theorem as one of the clauses of your CNF.
So at the beginning you would and the theorem, and then at the end, at the result, you're going to have the theorem itself. So, for example, if going back to the homework question.
Okay, so yeah, we can use the homework assignment to illustrate that. Not using proof by contradiction, we can still use resolution for a direct proof. Okay, so but when you're doing a direct proof, you do not want to use the theorem or the contradiction of the theorem as a part of your starting point. So in this case, you will start with the stuff that is in iota, but then you also want to recognize your theorem as a CNF. So your theorem is the negation of P and R, which is not a CNF yet, so we want to convert it into a CNF. This one is easy. It is just you apply the Morgan's laws once, and it becomes not P or not R, and this is a CNF. So this is your goal. This is where you can say, oh, if I can get to this, I can stop. So now we can do some resolution and see if we can get there.
That's already in. That's already in.
Yep, it's already in here.
So it's done.
Yep, so we're done. Yep.
So this is one of the first.
Well, in this case, we are lucky that it is already there. But it's not always the case. So if it is not in there already, then you will have to go through resolution steps and see if you can make that happen. Because what a resolution step is it is still something in zeta, right? Anything in zeta, an element of zeta is what? It is called starts with an I. It's an inference, right? And what does inference mean in propositional calculus? Okay, inference means you're given a set of well-known formulae. Okay, so you're given psi 1, psi 2, psi 3, and so on. Okay, up to psi n. And this is basically saying we can infer psi. Well, these are phi's. You can infer psi is true. This is syntactic, but we already know that resolution is sound, which means it makes sense, right? So if it is sound, that means we can also come to a conclusion that these will imply that. So each time you apply resolution, the result of the resolution is basically quote unquote implied by whatever you start off with on the other side. I'll give you one example. This is a good example here. So when you look at this particular clause and this particular clause here, they both combined, the conjunction of those two imply this, regardless of the rest of the CNF. Okay, let me just isolate that and talk about that. So I'm going to use this space over here. So what I'm talking about is, if you look at this, single out this clause and single out the other one that we use for this resolution step. When you single out these two, you can actually establish a implication between those two and the result of the resolution. Because if it doesn't do this, that means the inference rule itself is not sound. It doesn't match actual logic. Is that okay? Any other questions? Okay, how do we prove this? How can we prove that this whole thing implies this whole thing without using the proof of resolution is sound? You can use a truth table, exactly. Now, the truth table it works really well when you have relatively few variables, like 4 variables will give you 16 rows, but it's exponential. If you have 6 variables, then you have 64 rows in the truth table. But the approach does work. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You mean it's just P or you mean PR?
It means P. That means P. Oh, that's right. Because we took out that parentheses, so that's why I prefer to have more parentheses if we can. Yep. There you go. Yep. So you're correct. It's just P. Okay. Is that okay? Or are there questions about this part? This is all good? Yep, go ahead.
Wasn't P derived from a contradiction of the proof?
P is derived from the contradiction of the theorem that we are trying to prove. Because the theorem that we're trying to prove is the negation of P and R, right? So in order to, okay, that's fine. It's not a problem. But we're still implying that. But when your question was P coming from the negation of the theorem that we're trying to prove?
Right.
And the answer is yes. Because the theorem that we are trying to prove is the negation of P and R, right? But the negation of that is just P and R. And that's why we introduce P and R into the entire CNF and then try to resolve to false. Is that answering the question or not?
I don't know, I was just thinking like in iota you have things that are true. So
Yes.
I assume you match those things together to get something that implies.
But it makes no distinction. Resolution makes no distinction where the clauses come from. In other words, this clause can come from iota itself, can come from the negation of the theorem that you're trying to prove, can come from another step of the resolution that is neither in iota nor the negation of the theorem. It doesn't even matter, because whenever you apply resolution, it's basically saying the two clauses that you start off with implies the resulting clause, which is also basically saying if this is true, this has to be true. Okay? But how do we know resolution in general is true? Because I can prove this one, by using a truth table that is specific to this entire expression. Now how do we prove this is true? This implication itself is true. What are we looking for in the truth table? Okay, but which column is all true? Okay, so we are looking at a truth table that has P, Q, R, S, right? And then it has the original, the first disjunction phrase, which is not P, not Q, R, S. It has another column for not Q or S or R or S. Okay? And then it has one column for the implication itself. In other words, is this implying that? So which column should I look at in order to see whether that implication is holding or not? The implication one. Okay, we can work out two rows. Okay, so let's work out a few. So we can work out two rows. 0, 0, 1, 1. I'm just randomly picking one row like this. Okay, and I'm randomly picking another row 1, 0, 0, 1, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so in this case, when P is false, we know this has to be a true already because the negation of P is a part of the disjunction. And over here we have Q being false. Okay, this is a true as well. So the implication, okay, is this implying that? The implication itself is true because we have true on one side and true on the other side.
What about the P? Right? What about the and P part by itself in the original line on the projector?
Oh, okay, we're missing that one, huh? Okay, so we're missing the P, and that one is false in this case. So this whole thing is false, implies true, but the implication is still true. But you're correct, I missed that P. Okay, if we look at the second row, then we have, this is, I'm just looking at a quick way to make it true. Okay, S is good, because S is true, so this one is true here. P is also true, so we have true and true. So the left-hand side of the conjunction is true. The left-hand side of the conjunction, of the implication is not Q. Well, Q is false, not Q is true, so the entire thing is true here. So the implication is also true. But without listing the entire table, I can tell you that this entire column is going to be 16 ones. They're all going to be true. Is that okay or not? Yep.
How does true and false apply true?
True and false implies true because of the truth table of implication, but also you can look at it as the definition of implication. Because the implication, when you look at P, Q, P implies Q as its own truth table, it is quote unquote defined to be false implies whatever is true. And then true implies false is the only time the implication itself is false. True implies true itself is also true. But if this is not okay, you can also look at the definition of P implies Q. It's really saying the same thing as not P or Q. So when you plug in not P or Q and then plug in these particular values of P and Q, you still end up with the same truth tables, the same as this column. Because in this case we have not P or Q. P itself is false, so we know this one is true. On the second row, it's the same thing. So anytime P is false, then the implication itself is true. On the third row, not P is true already. Not P is false, but Q is false as well on the third row. So now we have false or false, which gives us a false. And then on the last row, we have Q being true, but not P is also true because P itself is false. Excuse me. P is true, not P is false, but Q itself is true, so that's why we still end up with a true here. So that's why this and this are the same, basically. It's just for convenience purposes we use the term implication instead of not the first part or the second part. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Is there a trick to know which two rows to use rather than all 16? Based on
no, you have to exhaustively prove that every single row
or is this
true.
You knew to use those two rows?
No, well, I know that no matter which row I pick, it's going to be true. The implication itself has to be true.
Okay, so you just pick two random ones?
I just randomly pick two.
Okay.
Yep. So that brings up the question: how do I know that all of these columns? Out of this entire column, they're all true. How do I know that resolution in general works? Exactly. So let me just kind of go back to the proof itself, just so that you know where to look for that proof. The proof is in resolution. The first part of the resolution notes is the whole thing. Okay? So when you look at this expression here, how is this different from this expression here? Those two are slightly different, but the difference is significant. This one is using the inference symbol. This one is using the implication symbol. How is that different? Huh? Well, soundless is related to these symbols. This one is a syntactic operation, which basically is just pattern matching. Okay? If we start off with something that matches the pattern to the left-hand side of the inference rule, then we automatically say, oh, we can do some syntactic manipulation so that the right-hand side becomes a new CNF, and we throw that into the pool. Is that okay? Does it make sense? We don't know. We don't care. It's a syntactic operation. Okay? No. You can have a propositional calculus system that is not sound, which means it can just give you some really weird logic and something that is useless to us.
So that's in Zeta.
Mm-hmm. That is in Zeta.
And Zeta doesn't necessarily have to be well-formed formulas that are true.
That's iota.
Okay.
So iota starts with all the well-formed formulae that are known to be true. But Zeta includes all the transformation rules. How do you start with something and end up with something else? Okay? So that entire thing is in Zeta because it is basically describing a syntactic rule to say that if you can give me something like whatever is to the left-hand side, then I will give you whatever is on the right-hand side. Does it make sense? We don't care. It's a syntactic operation. It really is just pattern matching. Give me something that matches this pattern, and I'll just move the symbols around so that we end up with something else. So it doesn't by itself, it can be totally meaningless. So that's why we need this part here, because we need to make sure that that inference rule is sound, which means it is meaningful. Okay? How do you know it is meaningful? Well, the implication has to hold true. Okay? If you start off with whatever is on the left-hand side, it has to imply whatever is to the right-hand side. That has to make sense. How do we know that that makes sense? You can use a truth table. Okay? If you use a truth table, it will only have 8 rows in this case, because we only have 3 independent variables in this case. Because we have got phi, we have got psi, and we got rho, and there are only 3. And you can see the actual proof is longer. Using actual Boolean algebra to prove this is longer than 8 lines. So, using a truth table is the quicker way to do it. But regardless of whether you use a truth table or Boolean algebra, the conclusion is no matter what you put into phi, psi, and rho, in each row it's going to be a 1. And that is how we can prove that the inference rule is sound, because it does make sense. Is that okay? Any questions about what I just said? Yep.
So you said that inverse symbol is referring to syntactic.
Yep, it's a syntactic operation. It is not a semantic operation.
So do you ever use semantic at all?
Not when you're writing a program to do theorem proving. Because a computer doesn't understand the meaning of what is implication, what is conjunction, what is disjunction. It is just doing pattern matching. That's all it's doing. It's just matching patterns. If I see this, then that is a conclusion. If I see this, that is the conclusion. Does it make sense? Well, maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't make sense. Okay? So we are the people behind writing those particular programs for automated theorem proving. So we have to make sure that those rules, those syntactic rules, make sense. And how do we make sure those syntactic rules make sense? Well, we have to prove them. So we are the people who are responsible to make sure that this is always true when we have an inference rule that looks like this. Okay? Because if you cannot prove that the implication is always true in this case, then you can have the inference rule in your system, but it is not sound anymore. If you have an inference rule that is not sound, that means the result of all the inferencing is meaningless to us. It's just some mumble jumble after some syntactic operation, but does it mean anything? Nope, doesn't mean a single thing to us. to put it in a different term, to most gamers, okay? Whatever you do in the virtual world in the game has to have some kind of reference in the real world. If you have a video game, okay, so let's say you put yourself into a video game, and the physics in the video game is completely different from our current, physical world, physical rules. Okay, do you think people would like that game? It'll be very hard to play because it doesn't map to what you already understand as reality, as real, and not even in the slightest sense. So it's the same thing here. The computer is dealing with rules like this, but in real world we are dealing with the meaning of logic like that. Okay, is that part okay? All right. Yep.
Okay, so if in our homework assignment, it was if we were never able to reach a contradiction, like an example like this, would be false, right? Like you're no longer allowed to imply anything.
Okay, if you cannot arrive to a contradiction in a problem similar to the homework assignment, it simply means that the proposed theorem is not a theorem, which means when everything is known to be true in the iota is true, the theorem is not necessarily true. That's your only conclusion, is that the implication does not hold. Does it mean that the theorem is always false? No, it does. It simply means it's not always true. Is that part okay? That's a good question. That is a really good question. Yep.
So is the semantic entailment basically the proof? One and the same?
The semantic entailment is a proof. That is correct. Okay. So each time you refer to a semantic entailment, you are basically using implication in place of the inference symbol. So it becomes a proof.
Okay.
But the proof has to finish as true. Because if the proof does not end up with true like this, instead if it's some kind of non-true, well-formed formula, it's still not working.
It would be incomplete, right?
It will be incomplete, correct. So it has to be a true if you want to establish semantic entailment. Okay, are we still doing okay so far with propositional logic stuff? Okay. So today is a good day to review some of the exams from the previous year because I think we are scheduling the exam 1 to next Thursday. Okay, so in 1 week we have the next exam.
Online is Tuesday.
Online is Tuesday. Well, do you guys would anyone object to moving the exam to Thursday? Well, okay, for people who are taking this class and also 310, those people may have an objection because they would end up with 2 exams on the same day.
I know, I've got an exam on that.
So we'll keep the date. We'll keep the Tuesday date, okay? Because it's the the homework itself is a part of the practice that you need for the exam. Yes, go ahead.
Who else is here that's in 310 as well? Are you guys against having the exam on Thursday?
When your exam and every other exam in your classes are all on Thursday, I'm not pushing this one back till Thursday too.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I have every single test in all my classes on the same day.
And besides, we already scheduled this exam on Tuesday to begin with, so.
Let's complain, guys. I already took the
Because I think it says March 7th. I think it says March 7th.
Yeah, so March 7th is the day that we're going to keep. Next Tuesday. All right, so we'll take a look at the exam from last semester. This is exam 1, and here's the original exam itself. Okay, so several things that are important in case this is the first time you take my class. When you write down your name, I need your family name first, okay? because this is what I need to match up the name in Moodle when I grade your exam. If you write down your first name first, sometimes it's obvious, which one is the first, which one is the last name, but sometimes it's not obvious, okay? So I need you guys to write your family name first. The time obviously is not going to be the same. The location is not going to be the same, but it is still going to be open book and open notes and no electronics. Okay, if you have been taking notes using your computer, print it out. Okay, but it's open book in the sense of it's open books. Okay, if you find like 20 books that you think might be helpful in the exam, roll them in. Okay. Yep, make use stack it up. Yep, roll them in. It's okay. You can use the notes. Anything that you take during the class. You can even borrow notes from people from last semester. That's okay with me. Okay, anything that is handwritten or printed prior to the class, you can bring. Is that okay? Is that okay? Psychic paper is not allowed. Doctor Who, psychic paper. Okay, so no psychic paper, okay? Because psychic paper is not written prior to the exam, it's written during the exam. So
Slightly psychic.
yeah. Well, you can kind of, Doctor Who would have, I would have a big problem with Doctor Who in this class because he can travel in time as well. So unless I can detect that he has traveled in time, I cannot catch him cheating in this class. So that would be a problem. Okay, individual assessment, okay? So the exam, the score should reflect the competency of the student with the name and the student ID as indicated above without prior knowledge to the exam questions. Okay, so that means if someone, for whatever reason, gets a hold of the exam questions prior to the exam, that will basically make it not follow this particular rule. I don't see how anyone can do that because I'm a very last minute kind of person. So if you were to ask me like the day before the exam, Tag, can you give me something, can you give me the question of the exam? Even if you're a mind reader, you cannot get anything. You just get static, like that. Answers should be independently and originally derived in the allotted time frame, observing all the rules applicable. So that's kind of obvious. No sharing of open book notes material during the exam. Okay, you guys can work together. Okay, for all I care, you can work together. It is actually a good idea to study together, come up with the notes together. Okay, and you can even bring in exactly the same notes. It's just that no sharing during the exam. Okay, so nothing like, oh, I can see that you have notes of that particular date. Can I borrow that during the exam? That would not be okay. Okay. The last one is do not discuss the questions with students who may not have taken the exam. So, you can talk about the exam amongst each other. That's okay, as long as you know the other person was also in the exam. Okay? You can use additional sheets of paper if necessary, and most of the time, most people can fit the answers onto the paper itself. But if you think that you might need additional paper, bring your paper. Okay, I'm not going to supply additional paper. Write legibly. I cannot give points to answers that I cannot interpret without post-exam explanation. So if somebody gives me like this, okay, and I say, oh, I have no idea what this is, give you a 0, then that person comes back to me and say, but Tech, I really meant, P conjunction Q, and then the whole thing, disjunction with R, okay? I cannot give those points back because that really does not look obvious to me. Not that anyone has tried. Questions are weighted as indicated. Sometimes I use equal weight and sometimes I do not. The first exam tends to have some easier questions that have lower point values. So you need to take a look at the point values. And the first exam accounts for 20% of your final grade. So it's not super heavy duty, but it is a significant chunk. All right, so let's take a look at the questions from the previous semester, right before this one. So the first question is worth 1 point. It's asking this set, okay, on the left-hand side is the Cartesian product of which two? can you name the m and the n where the Cartesian product of those two would end up with this particular result? What do you think? So m is going to be the set of 1, 2. This is m, and n is going to be AB. Yep, that's the correct answer. Okay, question number 2 is worth a little bit more. It's worth 2 points. I give you the two sets, or the two expressions. I tell you what is A conjunction with B, intersecting with B. So the intersection of A and B has the elements A, B, C. The union of A and B has A, B, C, D, E. So I just want you to give me one way to make this happen. Give me one particular case, of A and B, so that the intersection is A, B, C, and then the union is A, B, C, D, E. You can give me the easiest one. Yep. So the easiest one is just A is A, B, C, because the intersection of A and B are the elements that are common to both of those sets. And then the union would be it would include all the elements of both sets. So this is the easiest answer. Well, that's interpretation of my intention, so I'm not going to comment on that.
It's going to be like, hey, 50
Okay, question number 3, worth a lot more points. Okay, so you're given the following: P implies Q and Q implies R. First, derive the CNF that represents both expressions, and you need to show the steps. Okay, well, let's go ahead and do that. P implies Q is not P. You can use the same notation as in the homework assignment, so you can use this notation, and that's a CNF. Okay, this is a CNF. And then the same thing with Q. Q implies R is the same thing as not Q or R, and that is a CNF as well. And I have answered the first question, derive the CNF that represents both expressions. And if I want to explain it, I can say by definition of implication in both cases. So they're both using just the definition of implication. That's the first part. Then use resolution and proof by contradiction to conclude whether the following is a theorem or not. P implies R. Okay, so what we need to do, now you have to be careful because in this case I need you to show the steps, which basically means you need to tell me what is the negation of the theorem. So you have to say the negated theorem is the negation of P implies R, right? And that is the negation of not P or R. And then once you apply the Morgan's law, then you end up with the negation of P and R. Okay, so I would use parentheses, here. And then you also know that double negation cancels out. So oops, I'm missing a not R here, because the Morgan's law is distributing the negation into the inside. So now you have basically just P as one clause and then not R as the other clause. Okay. So now that you have the negated theorem, we basically put all the expressions together. So this is the CNF of all known to be true well-formed formulae and the negated theorem. And of course, in this case, I can cheat a little bit because I can copy and paste, but it's not really that much writing. And I think just manipulating the cursor is taking enough time. Just writing it's faster. Okay, so we have not Q or R, and then we have P by itself, not R by itself. And then we have to do the resolution. So when you perform the resolution, I would like you guys to kind of indicate how you come to that particular step. So in this case, how do we get to a false? Okay, if we can get to a false. This one is easier because we only have very few variables. So the not R can work with this R here. So we'll go ahead and copy this, paste it, and end up with just not Q. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and highlight the ones. Now this part is definitely a whole lot easier when you're writing it and not using a tool. So we'll just do a single underline and a single underline. I don't think we can do a double underline here, so I'll just use a boldface to indicate something that is new in this case. Alright, so now that we have this, the not Q can cancel out this Q, can work with this Q over here and end up with a not P. Okay, so we'll copy and paste it. In fact, we'll just go ahead and highlight it first. So this Q is going to be underlined, and this not Q is going to be underlined, and then the new expression is a not P. And just to make it clear, we'll go ahead and cancel out the formatting on the other ones. As I said, at this point, it is actually harder to use a word processor. And then once we get here, it's actually pretty easy. Okay, so what would be the next step? Come on, you guys can look at this and tell me. Yep, we got P and not P, so we got the 0. So you still have to kind of indicate that 0 is the result here. So we'll undo all the formatting over here. Control backslash, I think will do it. Okay. So we still have to indicate how we got to the 0, because that's a. Oh, did I forget one thing? Nope, I did not. Okay. So we have to underline the two things that is leading to the contradiction. So now we have the contradiction. It's not quite the end yet. Okay. So you have to clearly state the conclusion. This is not a conclusion. This is the result of derivation. It is not by itself a conclusion. So you have to say, since the negated theorem leads to contradiction, the theorem is true. Yep.
So on the exam, you want us to actually copy all the third and then underline it, and then.
You have to make it clear to me how you perform, how you do the resolution steps.
Do you refer to the copy?
If you do not copy, you can use arrows. Yeah, you can use arrows and just indicate, okay, this and this resolves to this, and then this and that resolve to this, and so on. It has to be clear to me, how you did the resolution. Yep.
Use the highlight.
Okay.
You can highlight. Yep. You can use a different highlight color if you want to. As I told one of my classes, possibly this one. I'm not colorblind, so you can use any colors. I have no special accessibility need. Because if I were colorblind, then I would have to say you guys have to use only these colors because I cannot distinguish certain colors. Okay, so that's the answer. Question number 4 is worth 8 points, which is quite a bit. Okay, so it says f is a function. It maps some kind of domain D to some kind of codomain E, and is known to be a bijective function. Use proof by contradiction to prove that the theorem that the inverse function f to the power of -1, which is the inverse function notation, which is mapping the codomain of f to the domain of f, is a function. That's all I need. I just need to know that it is a function. There's an inverse and it is a function. The correct setup of this proof is worth some points. Okay, so you have to tell me how proof by contradiction works. Hint, you are likely to need to know and use the properties of injectiveness and surjectiveness and what makes a function a function. Okay, and I even give you what makes a function a function. Okay, so in case somebody did not bring the notes and whatnot, this is also included here. And then even more hint, it may be helpful to see a function as a set of two tuples. Okay, so the question now is, how do we go about doing this? How do we prove by contradiction something like that? What is the first step of proof by contradiction? Negate the theorem. Okay, so just by stating, okay, the negated theorem is, how do we get the negated theorem?
We'll just say that E maps to D is not a function.
Okay, so we basically say, F inverse is not a function. Okay, so once again, this is harder for me to type than it is for you to write. Okay, so you need a superscript here. Format, superscript, control plus dot. Okay, and that's it. Okay, the negated theorem is that simple. Okay, F inverse is not a function. Okay, so if F, what is F and what is F inverse? How do we represent a function? Can somebody read more hints? More hint. It's a set of two tuples, right? Okay, so that means if F is a set of two tuples, F inverse is also a set of two tuples. Is that okay? So what is F inverse as a set? Control dot. Oh, that works. Cool. Okay, so F inverse is now seen as a set. How do you describe that particular set? Okay, so let's use the set notation here. Okay, we use curly braces to indicate whatever is in here are describing elements of a particular set. Okay, we know one thing about a particular function, a function which is seen as a two tuple. They're all tuples, right? Okay, so everything in F inverse are going to be two tuples as well. So for no particular reason, I'm just going to choose x, y as the name of the first and the second of the tuples. Can somebody describe how do we relate x, y as a two tuple to something that is in F? Because this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to relate F inverse to F. So this is such that, right? Okay, so F inverse consists of two tuples that looks like this, x, y, such that, such that what?
Y-X is a element of F.
Yep, exactly. Would that work? Okay. So now we have established that F inverse, first of all, is also a set. It has exactly the same cardinality as F itself. It's just that every two tuple in F inverse is the reverse of that same tuple in F. Okay, it's just reversing everything. But does it automatically make F inverse a function? Does not make it automatically a function. Okay? Because I can give you a function like this. Okay, if I say f of x is 0, okay, and I can even give you a very simple D or domain, and let's say the domain is just 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's fine. And I can give you a codomain of 0, 1, 2. Okay, or even just 0 by itself is fine. Okay, this makes the function surjective.
But it's same as the function
That's right, but I'm not answering the question right now. I'm just showing you how to look at F inverse. Okay, so F inverse in this case is the same thing as F, but with everything inside reversed. So in other words, in F itself, 1 maps to 0, 2 maps to 0, 3 maps to 0. So the inverse is just reversing the direction. So we have 0 map to 1, 0 maps to 2, and 0 maps to 3. According to that definition of F inverse, right? But is F inverse a function? It is a set of two tuples. It doesn't automatically make it a function. Why is this not a function?
The cardinality of x is 3, not 1. The cardinality of x versus 0. So from that function definition, you take the cardinality of element x in the domain, which is 0 in that case.
Okay, it will violate that particular rule because there is one element in domain. Well, there's only one thing in domain in this case, right? It is our 0, and when you look at the set of how 0 can map to something in F, it maps to 1, it maps to 2, maps to 3. So the cardinality, which is this part here, is now 3. It is not 1. And as a result, F inverse in this particular example is not a function. Okay, so I'm not answering the question itself. I'm only trying to get the notation of F inverse across. That F inverse is a set of two tuples where each tuple has, if you reverse the tuple in F inverse, it becomes an element in F itself. Is that part okay? The notation itself. Okay? So when you look at F inverse as just a set of two tuples, how do we make sure that this rule is followed? That becomes the question. Okay? But since we also know that we are making the assumption that F inverse is not a function, we are expecting this to get to a contradiction of some kind, right? So we are now basically saying this rule is not followed, which basically means it is either a 0 or 1. So now we can say, okay, there exists an element in E, we'll call it E, a lowercase e, such that the rule is not followed. So when the rule is not followed, it's basically saying the cardinality of the set, and such that E maps to something on the other side. In this case is going to be E. I'm just picking a symbol here. So that E Y, so the YE is in F. Okay, I'll explain why I'm using F and not F inverse here. Does not equal to 1. Okay. Do you guys want to use this or the other one? Not equal to? That works? Okay. Okay, so the reason why I choose to use F, not F inverse in this case, is because EY is in F inverse. Okay? So YE should be in F. Because everything in F inverse is just a mirror image of the same thing in F. Does that make any sense? Now, if the cardinality is not 1, there are two ways to make it not 1. Okay? So there are two separate cases. So the first case is it is 0. Okay. Since I use C notation, I probably should stick with C notation here. Okay. It is either 0 or it is greater than 1. Greater than 1. Does that make any sense? Not equal to 1 means it is less than or greater than 1. But since you cannot have a negative number as cardinality, the only thing that can be less than 1 is a 0. That's why I can lock down the 0 instead of saying, oh, it can be negative 1. No, it cannot be negative 1. Does that make any sense? So now you have to show that in either case, it leads to a contradiction. Okay, you have two branches. Okay, let's see how this can be a contradiction. Why do you think this is going to be a contradiction?
Because it would mean that F inverse has no elements in it.
Okay, so this means okay. So let's figure out what this means. So this means YE. Okay, this means nothing maps to E in big E in F. What is the big deal about this? Why is this a contradiction of some kind?
Because F has consistent tuples.
No, that's not the reason. It is not. Okay, E is the codomain of F. Okay, so this is basically saying there's an element in the codomain of F that has nothing from the domain mapping to it. So it is not surjective. Okay, very good. Okay. Okay. Which means F is not surjective. And why is this going to lead to a contradiction? Yep. But we were told that F is bijective, which means F is surjective. Now we have a contradiction. Because we were told that F is bijective, which also means that we were told that F is surjective. But by using the logic, if we say that F inverse is not a function, in one branch, it means F is not surjective, which leads to a contradiction. Okay, so this is the first one. The second one is like this. Okay, what does that mean? Well, if you look at this one, then this means what? Remember, E is coming from the codomain of F. And I can find two tuples in F where E is the second component. What does that mean for F?
At least one element maps to the same place in F.
Okay, so let me say that one more time. Okay, E is in the codomain of F. Okay, so what this means is there are at least two tuples in F that have the same second element E. What does that say about F itself? It is not injective. Okay? Okay. This means at least two elements of D maps to the same element E in E. Well, does it mean F itself is not a function? No, it is still a function. This means F is not injective. And then you can use the same argument, but we were told that F is bijective, which means F is also injective. So we have another contradiction. So no matter which branch you go, you have a contradiction. Contraction. No. Contradiction. There we go. We're just missing DI. Yep. No, you have to do both. Because if we have an OR, so if the disjunction itself is false, then we have a real contradiction. But if only one branch of the OR is a false, the other branch can still be a true, then you don't have a contradiction. Okay, so you need to make sure that both branches of the OR ends up with a contradiction. Are there any questions about this? So this is a question where I combine the understanding of contradiction, proof by contradiction, with the understanding of functions. Well, in cooking, they call it fusion. It's part Thai and then part Mexican. They're both spicy, right? So it's okay. They're compatible. It's both logic and they're both math, so they're compatible. Stir fry them. Okay, so let's take a quick look. I know we are running out of time, and then we have a few more questions to go. Okay, well, question number 6 we can just kind of ignore, but question number 5 is an easy one. We have a relation R over ABC, and it is defined like this: ARA, BRB, CRC, ARB, BRC. Okay, so I just want to let me know. You need to let me know whether it's reflexive or not. Is it reflexive? Yes. Is it symmetric? Symmetric means if you have ARB, then BRA has to be there too. Okay. Is it anti-symmetric? It is anti-symmetric. Is it transitive? It is not transitive, because transitive means if you have ARB and then you have BRC, then ARC needs to be there as well. So it is not transitive. Is it partially ordered? No, it is not, because it's not transitive. For something to be partially ordered, it has to be transitive as well. And because it is not partially ordered, it cannot be totally ordered either. But this one, you can plug things into the matrix that we have. Even though that one takes 4 elements, you can kind of nudge this one to make it work. Because all you have to do is to add D to it, and then you have to add DD as one of the relation, and then you have to add CD as part of the relation. Then it is just an extension of this, but it has 4 elements, and then you can use the spreadsheet to tell you whether it is, of those properties or not. And I'm pretty sure it's not, because it's not transitive, and as a result, it cannot be partially ordered. I'm going to double check real quick over there. Okay, so I'm just going to go quickly over here to test this thing. So we got true, 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 and then we have B, R, A, C, R, B, R, C, no, C, R, B, okay, B, R, A, CRB, no, okay, I'm missing something here. CRB is good. Okay, so we have to turn this into a false, oops, false, and turn this into a false. Then it becomes almost exactly the same as the other one. And then when you look at this, we have, partially ordered is true because it needs transitive. It is not transitive. Partially ordered needs E58, 59. Oh, I know why, because I got a problem in the spreadsheet. I was referring to the wrong row. Okay, that's why. It should be 91. Okay, so let me just fix this bug first, and then we're good. All right. So now the spreadsheet is consistent with the answer. I just found my own bug and fixed it. All right. Questions? Okay. All right. So we will still have the exam on Tuesday. I have office hours tomorrow, but my office hour is kind of sprung tomorrow because of something that I have to do at 9 o'clock. I have office hours on Monday as well as Tuesday. So we have about 2 hours and a half of office hours left before the exam.
Could you put the old exam on the shirt folder?
The old exam? Yeah, we can do that. Yep. Yeah, if you don't see that later tonight, you'll just let me know and I'll go ahead and fix it.
So you're going to put what you worked on the shared folder, the X1 document?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can do that.